Welcome back. This is a quick tech where we learn together one step at a time. So last time we worked on the goal tracker. We cleaned it up, made it look nicer, added some drop downs to make things easier to manage. We also learned a few quick keyboard tricks to make things faster. Now for today, we're moving into the really useful and exciting stuff. We're jumping into formulas. We're going to build a brand new tracker from scratch, one that does all the calculations for you automatically. This is just the foundation though. We will keep building on this tracker in upcoming videos. If you are new to Google Sheets and also new to this series, you might want to pause and catch the previous episodes first. It will make today's content much easier to follow. If these tutorials are helpful, a quick like and subscribe really helps. Plus, you won't miss the upcoming episodes where we will continue learning more advanced stuff. By the end of this episode, you will have an expense tracker that calculates tax, tracks your running balance, and gives you instant insights into your spending patterns. Let's jump right in. Time for a fresh start. I'm going to create a brand new Google Sheets. So let me open up a fresh tab with Command T and type sheets.new and hit enter. Perfect. Let's zoom in. Let's call this expense tracker. Okay, you can call it whatever you want. You may ask, why an expense tracker? Well, everyone deals with money, and whether you're tracking personal spending, managing a small business, or just trying to figure out where all your money goes each month, this is going to be super useful. Plus, it's perfect for learning formulas because we will be working with real numbers and calculations that most people would care about. Let me set up our columns first. Here in A1, I will type date, hit tab, description, category, amount, tax, total, and finally balance. Great. Now let's quickly make these headers stand out. I will select the whole row with Command Shift and the right arrow. Make them bold with Command B and give them a background color. Click here and maybe this shade of blue. Wonderful. I think we should also modify the font color to make it easy to read. So click on this icon for text color and let's select something lighter, this one. There we go. Now some of you might be wondering, shouldn't we be using table here? It's a good question. Google Sheets does have kind of table setup, and yeah, it can be super useful. But for now, we're going to keep things simple. I want you to really get how the formulas work before we start adding more layers. Once you're comfortable with the basics, we can absolutely look at tables in future videos. If that is something you want to see, drop a comment below and let me know. Okay, before we start adding expenses, let me quickly show you how formulas work. And I promise I will make it super simple. Whenever you want Google Sheets to do something for you, whether that's math, combining texts, checking conditions, or pulling data from somewhere else, it all starts with an equal sign. Think of the equal signs like tapping Google Sheets on the shoulder and saying, hey, I need you to figure something out for me. That one symbol tells Sheets to switch into action mode, whether it's calculating totals, checking logic, or doing something more advanced. It all starts with an equal sign. Formulas can do way more than just calculations. Sure, you can add or subtract numbers, but you can also join text, like putting someone's first and last name together. You can grab parts of texts, change letters to uppercase, count items, basically anything you want to do with your data. But today we are sticking with numbers since we're building an expense tracker, because we all deal with money. Plus, it's a good way to get comfortable with how formulas work. Let me show you real quick. I'll click on this empty cell down here and type equals 5 plus 3. Look what happens when I hit enter. Cool, right? The cell shows 8, which is the result of the formula. But the formula itself isn't gone, it's just hidden behind the answer. Watch this. If I click back on that cell, look up here in the formula bar, you can still see the equal 5 plus 3. That is actually what is in the cell. This is where you can view and edit any formula you have entered. Let's edit it right from here and hit enter. Cool. Or alternatively, just double click the cell itself and change it down here and hit enter. So basically, every cell can do math, not just adding by using the plus sign. We can also do other arithmetic operations. For example, you can use the minus symbol for subtracting. Equals 10 minus 2, hit enter. Star for multiplying, equals 10 times 2. Slash for dividing, equals 100 slash 4. Great. Let me clean this up and let's get back to our expense tracker. Let's add our first expense. Say I went out for a lunch today. So in A2, I'll type today's date. I'm recording this on July 24th. So let's type 07/24/2026. Quick side note on entering date. There are other alternative ways, but here is a time-saving trick. If you want to enter today's date, the quickest way is to use a keyboard shortcut, which is Command and semicolon. And if you hit Command Shift semicolon instead, you will get the current time. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, back to the date. Before we continue, let me format the date column to show year first, then month and date. We've seen this in the previous episode. I want this applied to future expenses too, so I'll select several cells below by holding Shift and pressing the down arrow a few times to select one cell at a time. Remember, if I hold Command, Shift and down arrow instead, since these cells are all empty, it would select all the way down to the bottom of the spreadsheet. That's way more than what we need for now. So let me select just a few by holding Shift and the down arrow a couple of times like this. Now I will go to Format, then Number, then Custom Date and Time, and select this format here. Good. Now in cell B2, I will type lunch at cafe. For the category, I will put food, and the amount, let's say it was $15.99. Let's say we also pay tax on this one. Think of it like leaving a tip at a restaurant when you calculate 20% on your bill. That's what we're trying to replicate here. I'm using tax as an example, but this formula works for any percentage calculations. Tips, sales tax, discounts, and so on. Now, let's say the tax here is just 8%. Of course, you can experiment with different tax rates. Maybe 6%, 10%, just plug in whatever you want. The formula works the same way. Instead of doing the calculation ourselves, we will let Google Sheets handle it. Click here, then type equals D2 times 0.08. Press enter. There you go. You have a total of 1.2792 in tax. If you are wondering why 0.08, because 8% is just 8 divided by 100. That gives us 0.08. Now that you know every cell can do calculations, you can test it with equals 8 divided by 100, enter. See? Or just type equals 8%, enter. Great. To break it down, the D2 is the amount, the star means multiply, the 0.08 is the tax as a decimal. Let's clean this up by reducing the decimal places to 2. The easiest way is to click this Decrease Decimal Places button a couple of times. There we go. Now we have 1.28 instead of 1.2792. Now watch this. If I change the amount in D2 to, let's say, 20, the tax updates right away. And if I change it back, it adjusts again. That's the beauty of formulas. They are always live. By the way, this works way beyond this type of taxes. Want to calculate a 20% tip? Use 0.2 instead of 0.08. Maybe it's a 25% discount on a product. Use 0.25. Sales commission, savings interest, even school grades, same concept, same formulas. Anytime you need percentage of something, this is your go-to method. Now, let's figure out the total with tax included. Here in F2, I could type equals 1599, which is the amount at D2, plus 1.28, which is the tax at E2. And hit enter, it would work, no problem. But that's not the best move. In future videos, you will see why you should not do this. It will save you a lot of work. Those numbers are already in the sheets. Why type them again? Instead, I will click on F2 and type equal D2 plus E2, press enter. There we go, 1727, the amount plus tax. By the way, you don't even need to type the cell names if you don't want to. You can just click the cells and Google Sheets understand that and fills in the references for you. Here is how it works. Type the equal sign, then click on D2, type the plus sign, and now click on E2 and hit enter. Great. This approach is called using cell references, and it's much better than typing numbers directly. Here is why it matters. This actually ties into a key principle from programming called DRY, which stands for Don't Repeat Yourself. DRY is not just about avoiding repeated numbers, it's about avoiding any kind of unnecessary duplication. That includes data, formulas, even logic. The goal is to write things once, then reuse them wherever needed. When you build your spreadsheet this way, everything stays connected. If something changes down the line, you only need to update it in one place, and the rest updates automatically. Less work, fewer errors, and much cleaner setup. Let me show you what I mean. If I change the amount in D2, say to 25, the tax updates, yes, we've seen that, and so does the total. Change it back, everything updates again instantly. Now let's tackle the balance column. And here, we want to track how much money we have left after each expense. To set this up, I need to create a space for our starting budget, because we gotta start somewhere. To do that, I'll right-click somewhere here in row 2 and choose Insert one row above. Super. Now I will click on G2 and enter our starting budget. Let's say 500, which means this represents our beginning balance before any expenses. Now in G3, I want to show what remained after our payment for the lunch. So I'll type equals, then click on our starting balance, which is in G2, type minus, and click on our total purchase for lunch, which is in F3, then hit enter. Great. So what we did here is we took the starting amount and subtracted our total expense that we spent on the lunch, and we got 482.73 cents. Perfect. Now we have our starting balance and our remaining balance after the lunch expense. As we add more expenses, each new balance will follow the same pattern. Take the previous balance and subtract the current expense total. We will see in detail next. To save us some time, I've added a few more sample expenses here. In yours, just add whatever purchases you actually make. Now, once you have data like this, we can start analyzing. Right away, I noticed something. When I scroll down, the header row disappears. It's hard to remember what each column represents. To fix this, let's freeze the header row to keep it visible all the time. We covered this in the last video, so if you're following along, go ahead and pause here and try it yourself. Here is how I do it. I will go to the top left corner and I will drag this gray line below the headers. Easy peasy. Now, when I scroll down, you will always see the header column. Next, let's do the same for the date column as well, so that it's visible when you scroll to the right. Please feel free to pause and try, but here is how I do it. I will go to the top left again, and this time drag this vertical gray line to the right of the date column. Perfect. Now, when I scroll to the right, I can see the date column all the time. Now, if you look down here, starting from row 10, the date format changed from year, month, date to month, date, year. Why is that? Well, that's because when we set up our date formatting earlier, we only applied it to a few cells. Let's fix that and standardize the whole thing. If you've been following this series, you know there are multiple ways to apply formatting to dates. Again, please pause and try it yourself. Here is my method. I'll copy any of the properly formatted date using Command C, then select the cells I want to format with Command Shift down arrow and paste the formatting with Command Option V. That would be Control Alt V on Windows. Alright, moving on to calculations. The tax column needs to be filled in, but we don't want to manually type the formula for each row. Here is a smarter way to do it. First, click on E3 where the tax formula is. Remember the fill handle? When my cursor turns into a plus sign, I will click and drag that little blue circle down to E13. Just like that, Google Sheets calculates the tax for all the expenses. Magic. Now, if you click any of these cells, for example, say E5, you will see the formula updated to match that row, like this one. It took D5 and multiplied by your tax. And down here, it took D6. Sheets does that automatically. Alternatively, instead of dragging it like this, you can also double click it. Let me undo the change with Command Z and hover over on the lower bottom of this cell. When the cursor changes to the plus sign, I will double click it. Super easy. But here is the thing. Sure, double clicking is easy, but you gotta be careful. Let me undo and show you what might be an issue. For example, if one of these taxes is missing, say this one is not there, when you double click this formula, it only fills until it hits an empty cell on its left. So you might want to check if it's all filled. And if not, you can follow up by dragging like this. So dragging might give you more control over exactly where it stops. Now let's do the same for totals. I'll click on F3 and instead of double clicking like this or dragging the fill handle like this, let me show you another way. First, I'll select this cell with formula, then extend the selection to the cells below using Shift down arrow. And then use the Command D shortcuts to fill down the formula. Great. Just so you know, the Command D copies whatever is in the top cell to all the selected cells below. But if F3 had just a static value instead of a formula, whether it's a number or a text, it would copy that same value to every cell, like this. But since we had formula here, it copied the formula and automatically adjusted the cell reference for each row. Now let's do the same thing for the balance column. I really encourage you to pause the video and try it yourself. That's the best way to learn. But here is how I do it. I'll click on G3 where the balance for formula is and double click the fill handle. Easy peasy, right? Now we have a running balance that shows exactly how much money remains after each purchase. Wonderful. And that's your introduction to formulas. You've built a working expense tracker that automatically calculates tax, totals, and keeps a running balance. Every time you add a new expense, everything updates instantly. From here, try adding your own expenses to the tracker. You can play with different tax rates, add a tips column, especially if you eat out a lot, or try adding any other categories that make sense for you. The point is, the more you practice with these formulas, the easier it gets. In the next video, we'll take this tracker to the next level with some more advanced functions that will help you analyze your spending patterns and make your spreadsheet even smarter. Thanks for learning with me today. See you in the next video. Peace.